Hi there, Carlos here. In this second part to my MCS Week 8 analysis, I will be showcasing my top 8 match versus Ishizu Runic and my finals match versus Pure Sprite. Let's get started. This is game 1 of top 8 versus Ishizu Runic. I have lost to die roll. My opponent has opened Flashing Fire, Tip, Tactics, Mudora, and Orange Light. I have opened Sophia, Martha, Shifter, and 2 copies of Dark Ruler No More. I'm obviously going to use Shifter, and it will be met with an Orange Light. This deck does not play Gamma, and because we are in Top Cut, I am aware of what my opponent is playing. Because of that, I will use the Shifter in standby phase to play around a possible Talents. Unfortunately, the Shifter is met with Herald, and our opponent is able to do their combo, but at least the Talents is not live. We'll fast forward a little bit to our turn. Drawing the Slumber there off the first fountain was pretty brutal, as it meant that our opponent can now get some additional draws. They draw into Tyrius and 2 copies of Herald of the Orange Light. Our top deck is Pax. Now our Dark Ruler is going to be able to deal with Elf, but we'll have to walk into the Orange Light. I normal summon Sophia and then activate Pax. So we have 2 choices here. Normally, you would want to Pax for Irene, but I Pax for Ellis here because we already have an Irene in our graveyard and I want to keep my Vadis live. Pax for Irene would normally be better, as it would allow you to cycle an additional card. For example, if our Sophia draws into a redundant Exosister card, we can put that Exosister card back into the bottom of our deck and then draw with Irene. Because of the aforementioned reason with Vadis, I choose instead to Pax for Ellis. And funny enough, the exact scenario does come up. I drew into a second copy of Pax. Had I Paxed with the first one for Irene, I would have been able to put this Pax back and draw into something else, preferably like a hand trap. But I value keeping the Vadis alive. I set Dark Ruler No More and Returnia in order to play around the 50-50 on destruction. Which our opponent does happen to draw. I draw a Ash Blossom per turn, and then I search a second copy of Pax here. You might be wondering why I search a Pax when I already have one. Well, the Pax is less vulnerable to follow-up. If our opponent does somehow manage to clear our board, this way I'll have a second Pax for follow-up, as opposed to, say, a Vadis, which would have been cleared along with the rest of the board. Bouncing back to Gary ensures that we keep both of our Exceeds. We could have outed it with Magnifica, but we can also just attack with Asophiel, Michalis, and then Returnia to Exceeds into Magnifica, double attacking for a quick game. In this second game versus Ishizu Runic, our opponent opened Slumber, Tip, Gamma Seal, and 2 copies of Max C. Gamma Seal is an excellent card versus Exosister, and I'm not surprised they kept it in even though they knew they were going first. I've opened Ash Blossom, Stella, Irene, Sophia, and Vadis, so at least 1 hand trap. I decide to Ash the Hugin here in an attempt to keep my opponent off of Fountain. But it didn't matter. Runic Tip. Although it does mean that he isn't able to draw off of the Fountain. So it paid off. Drawing Shifter for turn always just feels great, doesn't it? Our opponent drops a Max C on us, which does limit our ability to play out our hand a bit. We don't want to give them too many draws, but we do at least want to summon with Stella. This gives our opponent our additional draw, which is a Runic spell. And while they can play for the Runic draws here, it would trigger both of these Exosister names, which would put our opponent very far behind and possibly enable us to even just OTK right off the bat, despite the fact that Maxi is active. I set 3 cards here and I choose not to attack into the Hugin to keep his extra monster zone occupied. And then our Martha is tributed for a Kaiju. This hurts a lot as it shuts off both our Arment and our Returnia right now. Fortunately, our opponent is sort of forced to use Fountain to draw, which means they can proc our Vadis. Asophiel will lock down the Graveyard, a strong card versus Runic. And we can immediately banish the Gigantic to ensure that our opponent can combo no longer. So I Pax for Martha to ensure that I can still OTK even if my opponent uses Freezing Curses, Flashing Fire, or Slumber, as I can activate neither Returnia nor Arment right now. Magnifica will dodge the Freezing Curses and then banish the Fountain. And the Mechalus that is brought out will now trigger Martha in order to attack for lethal. This is the first round of the finals versus Ray. It's also the first die roll that I won in my entire round of Top Cut that week. Ray has opened up Smashers, Harpies, 2 Lancias, and a Ghost Ogre. So a pretty strong lineup of going second cards, but no engine. And I've opened up Maxi, Ellis, Irene, Vadis, and Returnia. We're always going to start with normally in Irene and special in Stella. With Mechalics, I searched for Pax. I could have used this Pax to search for Martha, make a Caspitel, and then search another Martha for follow-up in hand. but that doesn't convert to an additional interruption on Ray's turn. Moreover, setting the packs makes it almost like a budget Vadis, and it can be used to dodge targeted back row destruction. The advantage of ending on Casp is that if our opponent has a Harpies or a Lightning Storm, I can chain the Returnia to them and then chain Vadis to Returnia in order to overlay the two Exosisters that are brought out by Vadis into a Michaelis, without having to have my opponent trigger those Exosister names. This play specifically requires a card in our opponent's graveyard if the back row removal is exactly evenly matched. Therefore, earlier in the turn, it actually was a mistake for me to banish the Ghost Ogre. But because I have Max C, I'm able to play more for follow-up versus playing for immediate board pressure. For this reason, I just keep the packs and set it. And to be fair, most people aren't on Duster or Lightning Storm. They're on like Cosmic Cyclones for Runic matchups. Ray just happened to open the one of. Now, because Ray top decks a starter, I was honestly out for the count if I did not exactly have Maxi. I draw an Imperm per turn. I could activate the Imperm right away on red, but if I bait it out with Martha, I can actually cause Ray to tribute a monster in an attempt to negate Martha, and then I have one less card on the board to deal with. So, why is Ray using Lancia? Lancia actually shuts down my ability to OTK. However, it also shuts off his smashers. Ray has to prevent me from searching because he's too far behind otherwise. Activating Lancia on summon is a bait. If I take the bait and chain Michaelis to now banish a card on the field, Ray can chain smashers in response. However, because we didn't take the bait, when Ray does attempt to smashers us, I can chain Michaelis and banish the red on field, which causes the smashers to fizzle. It may then have been more prudent to hold the smashers when I did not take the bait. I'm skipping game 2 because there isn't really much to say. Ray full combos with Sprite, searching Maxi in the process, drops a Maxi on my turn, and there's really not much that I can do. So let's analyze game 3 instead. Ray's opening hand is Starter, Talents, Ash, Jet, and Ronin Tonin. My hand is Ellis, Martha, Judgment, Imperm, and Imperm, which is good because it means that I can get into my extra deck even after getting Ashed. I could have made Magnifica here by searching for Pax. Then Pax can summon a Martha from the deck, and Michaelis can banish the Ash Blossom to trigger the Martha, and that gets a second Exceeds on board. However, on the spot, I decided not to play into Nibiru. Looking back on the game now, I realized that by doing so, I played even harder into Red Reboot. Nibiru is a card that Ray may or may not have if he expects me not to play into it. That's kind of the gamble with Nibiru, is it's dead if your opponent doesn't play into it. Red Reboot, on the other hand, is a card that has no counterplay, and Ray will side it if he has it. So I just search Returnia, set 4, and pass. Now, I'm not in a bad position here. Banishing the Ronin Tonin here was a very reckless play that cost me the finals. On the spot, I was thinking of the value that it had to take Ronin Tonin permanently out of the game. But it was much more correct to Solemn Judgment the normal, as if I Solemn Judgment the following starter, I'm punished by a second starter. Whereas using the Returnia on the monster off starter is at that point only really beaten by an additional level 2 extender, such as Emergency Teleport. From then on, Ray played his cards very well so as to not give me a chance to use the Solemn Judgment, which at this point he knows I have because of the toggle that occurs before the summon of blue is completed. He also did not play into Vadis. Moreover, the pending Pixies was a surprise that I really wasn't expecting. That's the reason why I impermed this blue. My thought process was I'll imperm the blue, then imperm the jet, and then Judgment the Gigantic that's summoned next. That Pixies though. That Pixies really won the game. The only top deck that gets me out of this situation is Martha. And I top deck a Pax instead. From here on out, the game was over. So, very unfortunate. I could not become a 2-time champion. I had to settle for 2-time finalist. But I had a lot of fun, and Ray was a fantastic opponent. This match really pushed my limits. Well, I hope you have all enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be participating in the MCS this week again. Wish me luck. If you're participating as well, then good luck to you too. Oh, and thank you so much for over 300 subscribers. You guys are the best. Bye-bye.